Hi all, this is your lovable host AJ, and I just want to talk about the next video. It's a pork tenderloin with a West Indian marinade called Seasonin. Now Seasonin is a little different than traditional like Jamaican jerk. It's similar because it has a lot of citric acid and flavorful spices and herbs, but this is a little different. It's heavier on the greener herbs, and you'll see that in there, and it's lighter on the spices such as allspice, nutmeg, things of that nature. It's a fresh dish. The marinade smells wonderful, and you'll notice I use Scotch bonnet or habanero peppers in there. And the reason is because years ago in the islands, they had a hard time. They didn't have refrigeration, so they couldn't store the meat. One of the things they used to do was salt the meat, and another thing was prepare these marinades, which they'd keep the food in, which would keep it fresh a lot longer than just salting it. It's a wonderful addition. I marinate the pork tenderloin, I cook it, and then put it back in the pork tenderloin, and I also use that marinade for other sauces. Even though I use habanero peppers, it's not as spicy as you would think, and it's a wonderful addition to your repertoire. I'll be showing different marinades in the future, but this is a special one, and I love this. So sit back, enjoy. We're going to make a marinade. I'm going to marinate a pork tenderloin and a couple of pork chops. And to do that, I'm going to use a marinade that's of West Indian descent. West Indian, specifically from the island of Barbados. It's kind of like a jerky, but not quite. It's not quite as fiery as the jerky, and it doesn't have as much of the allspice or the clove overtone that you'll find in a traditional Jamaican jerk. So what we have here, we have a little bit of marjoram, we have little thyme, garlic, habanero or Scotch bonnet chilies, a bunch of scallions or green onions, a bunch of chives, a bunch of green parsley, salt obviously, onion, some celery stalks, and green pepper. And the liquid we're going to use is a combination of lime juice and orange juice. I'll end up using these whole containers. This is going to be a large quantity because, again, I've got pork tenderloin and pork chops, and I also like to reserve some of the sauce for future dipping or putting on things. You'll find this sauce is extremely flavorful with all these nice green vegetables. The smell is wonderful and fresh and surprisingly bright and not overwhelming with spice, even though I do use the habanero peppers. So what I'm going to do, slice all this up, put it in the bowl, and blend it together into one large marinade, and marinate the tenderloin and pork chops for 24 hours, and you know, and broil it from there. Okay, we're back. I've got all the ingredients mixed and inside the bowl. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grind it all up and into a nice, like a slurry mixture. What I'm going to do that with is this. It's called a Smart Stick. This is great. It's got two settings, low and high. I can kind of maneuver it around in there. The bottom portion, the blade, it comes right off, pops off. That way I can pop this inside the dishwasher for an easy cleanup, no mess. I could use a blender for this, but this is a lot of material, and a lot of times the blender won't take all of it because you've seen me in fast motion, you've seen me kind of put everything in there. There's a lot of solids in here. I'm not going to chop everything up into a fine grain. That's what this is for. I tried to take out most of the stems. That didn't work. Sometimes the stems have more flavor, but with something like a marinade, or especially if I'm going to use it, part of it later on as a sauce, which I plan to, you don't want a lot of these sticks because they're kind of woody and add a bad texture, and they won't grind up very well. But at least for the marinade, I can do that, and the portion that I'm going to use later on for any type of sauce, I can strain that out, any little sticks or seeds. And you may have noticed, a lot of times with the habaneros, I left the seeds in because that's what gives it a lot more heat. I didn't use that many habaneros, and habaneros are not like, you know, some of the hotter peppers like the ghost peppers or something like that, where it's in your face, bam, like you're hit with a sledgehammer. It's kind of subtle, and it builds up slowly and steadily to a really high heat. One other thing, I'm not sure if I mentioned it regarding the orange juice and the lime juice, but you know, in Puerto Rico and Cuba, they have sour orange juice. Okay, it's not like, you know, what you'd get here, just orange juice, and you'd leave it sit on the counter for a week until it goes sour. That's a little different. It's the type of oranges that they use to replicate this. Really hard to find unless you go to a Caribbean market or a Latin market. So again, I'm trying to structure this to the average user, and you may not have one around and may not want to do that. So I use orange juice. It's approximately 2 cups of lime juice to 1 cup of orange juice. And I know I use bottles, which are a little different, but the proportions are generally the same. The good thing with the marinade, if I'm off a little bit by this or that, it's not a big deal, as long as the general proportions are the same. And you can see, I've got kind of quite a bit of liquid here, and it's going to turn into a nice slurry. So I'm going to start this out on a low speed. You see what I'm doing? I'm just kind of working it in there. It's now processed into a slurry, and you notice I'm trying to keep the solids in there because I still continue to add flavor as it marinates. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to let my dog in because he's outside first of all, but I'm going to be back and I'm actually going to prepare and show you how to marinate the pork tenderloin and the pork chop. So be right back. Okay, now I've got my pork tenderloin. You can see it here. Pork tenderloin is just that. It's kind of the center section. When you have a pork chop, it's a smaller section. This is very tender, and there's one with the beef called beef tenderloin, which is considered the prime and most juiciest cut of beef. It's similar with the pig, with pork. This is underused. A lot of people don't know how to cook this. This is a hearty meat. It can really stand a good marinade, and it's tender and juicy once you cook it. Real simple to cook. Once I marinate it, I'll put it on the broiler for probably about 5 minutes on each side. I'll have a nice crust on the outside and juicy and tender on the inside. Okay, so first I unwrap this already to spare you seeing that. But what you'll find pork tenderloin has, it has a silver skin on it. This is kind of a piece of the one of the tendons or muscles, and you need to get rid of that first because this is inedible and it doesn't break down in cooking. So what I just do is, you know, actually I need my paring knife for this. This is better. You see, all I'm doing is putting it under the skin, or not the skin, but underneath the fat. And I'm just kind of peeling it off here. I get the first layer of fat off, and you see it's underneath here. It's just a piece of muscle that's inedible and tough. And you do it now, it saves you a lot of time and a lot of headache later on. Okay, so I've got the tough connective tissue all sliced off. So what I'm going to do is I've got this handy marinade pan, and I'll show you the other side too. It's kind of like this. It's just a product from Tupperware that I've had for a while. You can use any type of flat, you know, Rubbermaid, Tupperware, whatever, a plastic container to do this in. But since this marinade is citric based, I would not recommend you use anything aluminum, like an aluminum pan. Stainless steel will work, but nothing aluminum. So I've got this, and what I want to do is I'm going to pour it over and let it marinate, and I'm going to cover it up. Okay, the beauty about this one is because it seals, so I can flip it over after 12 hours or overnight. That way it marinates thoroughly through and through. Look at this. So one of the things too I did is I put salt in here. A lot of times I'll put a little bit more salt to kind of create like a brine as well as a marinade. You know, there's lots of schools of thought on that, but that's just what I do. Okay, see? I've got a nice pour on that. Okay, now I gotta wash my hands after I'm done with this because I've got the habanero peppers in here, and I made that mistake once. I scratched my eyes after putting that on, and I'll never do that again. So I'll put that on, put the cover on, let it marinate in the fridge for 24 hours, and we'll be back to show you the results next. Okay, the tenderloin has been marinating for couple of days, and so we take it out. You can see how this is. This marinade can be used as sauce. It's great. So all I do, since I skimmed all the fat and the muscle off, put it on a pre-oiled broiling pan, and I stick it in the oven 6 inches from the top broiler on high, and it takes about 5 minutes per each side. So I'll be back with the finished product. Okay, the pork tenderloin just came out of the oven, and this is what it looks like, all nice, and you can see it's kind of nice and crusted, a lot of the marinade caramelized in the meantime, and that's fantastic. That's exactly how you want it. It looks like it's probably burned inside, but it's not. So what I do from here is I take it, and I think I mentioned it, I put it back in the marinade, okay, like this. What I want to do, I'll leave it in the marinade for 3 to 5 minutes and let it soak up all those wonderful juices. And as I put in my lamb video, I can use this as a sauce, and I've done that before, but what I'd prefer to do is just keep it as a marinade and maybe sprinkle a little sauce over there so it's not too heavy. But we'll be back when it's done, and you'll see the finished product.